July 16, 1969 marked a historic milestone in the space industry as the United States successfully landed 2 astronauts, Neil Armstrong and Edwin Buzz Aldrin, on the Moon. Over the next 3 years, 10 more astronauts followed, but since December 14, 1972, no human has returned. So why with the previous success of moon landings, has it taken so long to go back? In this video, we'll reveal 10 reasons why NASA has yet to return to the Moon 50 years after the last successful landing. And we're pretty sure you won't believe the bonus reason hidden in this video, so make sure you stay tuned till the end. The 10th possible explanation for NASA's lack of return to the lunar surface, post the Apollo missions, pertains to the conclusion of the space race between the United States and the Soviet Union. This space race, which was an outgrowth of the nuclear arms race between the two countries that had begun post-World War II, served as a means for both nations to showcase their technological preeminence in the field of space exploration. This competition eventually led to the development of formidable rockets as a demonstration of power and prowess. The Soviet Union, in October 1957, had launched the first artificial satellite, Sputnik 1, and in 1961, successfully sent the first human Yuri Gagarin into space. This achievement, understandably, caused unease among United States officials as they were determined to achieve a greater victory. One such victory would be the ability to develop rockets that could travel at faster speeds and higher altitudes, or to achieve the first manned lunar landing. In 1962, President John F. Kennedy articulated his administration's goal of landing American astronauts on the Moon and appealed to Congress for support. This appeal came at a time when the United States was trailing behind the Soviet Union in terms of space advancement. In order to achieve this goal, NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, accrued the necessary resources by 1966. This was accomplished by obtaining 4.5% of the total federal budget, which was 10 times more than its present share. This allocation of resources made the moon landing possible through the Apollo program within 7 years. To many, the space race ended with the Americans beating the Soviet Union to the moon, thereby making it seem that there was no longer a competition worth contesting. This, along with other factors, could have possibly contributed to NASA's decision to not return to the lunar surface after the Apollo missions. The 9th cause for NASA's failure to return to the lunar surface is the numerous hazards and perils that are inherent in traveling to the moon. The successful landing on the moon was beset by a plethora of life-threatening obstacles, making it a perilous undertaking. This is exemplified by the 2 major incidents that occurred during the Apollo missions. The first being the fatal fire incident that occurred on the launch pad of Apollo 1, resulting in the loss of 3 astronauts, named Command Pilot Gus Grissom, Senior Pilot Ed White, and Pilot Roger B. Chaffee, and the second being the oxygen tank explosion on Apollo 13, where the astronauts returned safely to Earth despite the event. Neil Armstrong, the first human to set foot on the moon, had also narrowly escaped death twice, once 14 months before the launch of Apollo 11 in a lunar landing training exercise and once during the landing of Apollo 11. The spacecraft's engine failed and the module exploded, but Armstrong was able to eject in time. Furthermore, the Apollo 11 mission was salvaged by the help of Hank Bradley, a U.S. Air Force meteorologist, who identified a thunderstorm on the spacecraft's path, thus alerting NASA to take necessary precautions. Additionally, other dangerous aspects of traveling to the moon include the abrasive nature of lunar dust, the absence of sunlight for up to 14 days, extreme heat during sunlight, and the potential for asteroid collisions. These risks alone may be sufficient reasons for NASA to not wish to return to the moon. However, there are other factors that also play a role. The 8th reason for NASA's prolonged absence from the lunar surface can be attributed to the exorbitant cost of lunar expeditions. The Apollo program, which successfully landed astronauts on the moon, incurred a staggering $25.8 billion in expenses, equivalent to approximately $264 billion in today's currency. In addition to the immense monetary investment, the program required the participation and support of over 400,000 individuals and more than 20,000 industrial firms and universities. Given the exorbitant nature of the mission, President Richard Nixon raised questions about the justification of the expense and danger associated with returning to the moon. Furthermore, NASA's former deputy administrator, Lori Garver, observed that policymakers were more focused on the launch of the program than its long-term feasibility in the 1980s. The Space Station Freedom Program, announced by President Ronald Reagan, was initially budgeted at $8 billion but ultimately exceeded $100 billion by the time of its completion in 2010. This trend of rising costs is not limited to lunar missions but rather a common challenge faced by space programs in general. In addition to the monetary burden, shifting national priorities such as addressing climate change, asteroid tracking, poverty alleviation, and counter-terrorism efforts have also played a role in NASA's reluctance to plan and execute a return mission to the Moon. Furthermore, NASA's Space Launch System, which is currently the only viable option for a lunar mission, is an expendable vehicle, unlike SpaceX's Starship, which aims to create a more cost-efficient and environmentally friendly option for space travel. The Starship program currently costed $5 billion. It is worth noting that the Apollo program and the Space Station Freedom program demonstrate the challenges and enormous costs associated with such ambitious space endeavors, and it is important to consider all aspects before embarking on such ambitious venture in the future. The sixth rationale behind NASA's abstention from returning to the lunar surface is the dearth of popular enthusiasm. Despite overwhelming support for the continuation of American leadership in space exploration, a 2018 Pew survey revealed that only a small fraction of respondents believed sending astronauts to the Moon should be a top priority for the United States. This apathy is further reinforced by the lack of interest among the young generation, who are increasingly inclined towards more contemporary pursuits such as content creation on social media platforms as opposed to traditional careers in space exploration. Furthermore, the Apollo program faced significant opposition from certain sectors of the African American community, with organized protests led by prominent civil rights activists decrying the expenditure on lunar excursions as a neglect of more pressing issues such as poverty and hunger. As a result, the absence of popular support for lunar missions makes it a challenging proposition for policymakers to justify the allocation of exorbitant funds for such endeavors. The fifth reason why NASA never returned to the Moon is due to a shift in government policies and administrative priorities. The constant change in government, with each administration coming in with their own aspirations and beliefs, has greatly impacted NASA's plans and goals. Each administration has targeted certain projects that can be completed within a shorter period, neglecting the long-term space program. This administrative whiplash makes it difficult to commit to projects that are not only capital-intensive but also outlast a two-term president. One such program is the return to the Moon. For example, in 2004, George W. Bush's directive to NASA to come up with a replacement for the Space Shuttle resulted in the Constellation program under the Space Exploration Initiative. NASA spent $9 billion over 5 years on this space flight program, yet it never came to fruition after President Barack Obama took office and cancelled the program in 2010, citing NASA's inability to estimate the cost of the Constellation program and stating that it was billions of dollars over budget and years behind schedule. This pattern of shifting priorities and program cancellations has resulted in a heavy loss that runs into billions of dollars, and has caused a significant waste of time and loss of public interest in the idea of returning to the Moon. Since the time of John F. Kennedy, no president has been able to successfully fund the plan to return to the Moon before their administration comes to an end and the proposed flight gets cancelled. The fourth reason why NASA never returned to the Moon is due to the instability and unreliability of software systems. The Apollo program, which ended with Apollo 17 as the last mission to the Moon, relied heavily on software to control the various functions of the spacecraft, including navigation, guidance, and life support. However, these software systems were prone to errors and were not always reliable. The Apollo Guidance Computer, AGC, is one example of such a system that presented significant problems for NASA. The AGC was the first digital computer to fly in space and was responsible for controlling the guidance and navigation of the Apollo spacecraft. The AGC was considered to be a breakthrough in technology at the time, but it was also prone to errors and was not always reliable. This was evident during the Apollo 11 mission, where the AGC experienced a number of software bugs that could have resulted in a mission failure if not for the quick thinking and expertise of the astronauts and mission control team. The third reason why NASA never returned to the Moon is due to the perceived danger and risk associated with the lunar environment. The harsh conditions on the lunar surface, such as the presence of craters and boulders, as well as the hazardous lunar dust, known as regolith, pose a significant threat to the safety of any astronaut attempting to land on the lunar surface. The Apollo missions of the 1960s and 1970s were plagued by issues related to the electrostatically charged lunar dust, which made it difficult for astronauts to move around on the surface and limited the duration of their stay. Additionally, the lunar environment is exposed to extreme temperatures, with temperatures reaching up to 127 degrees Celsius during the lunar day, and dropping to -173 degrees Celsius during the lunar night. The lack of a protective atmosphere on the Moon also exposes astronauts to harmful radiation. NASA has been developing equipment and technology to mitigate these risks, such as spacesuits and rovers that are resistant to dust and solar radiation, as well as power systems to supply astronauts with electricity during their stay. Moreover, the unknown and potential dangers in the lunar space also add to the concerns of returning to the Moon. There are theories about the presence of enormous and dangerous alien life form in the lunar space. And ultimately, the question remains, is the risk worth taking, or is the desire to return to the Moon greater than the fear of the unknown and potential dangers that may lie ahead? The second reason why NASA never returned to the Moon is that the benefits of traveling to the Moon are not always clear. Some argue that the benefits of a Moon mission are based on theoretical beliefs and that the government is hesitant to invest a significant amount of taxpayer money into such a project without clear benefits. One example of this is the Columbia accident in 2003, in which the space shuttle broke apart during re-entry, killing all 7 crew members. This tragic event raised important questions about the risks of space travel, and whether the benefits of a Moon mission outweigh the potential risks to human lives. The incident also sparked a debate about the cost-benefit analysis of space exploration, and whether the potential benefits of a Moon mission are worth the financial and human resources required to achieve it. This uncertainty and lack of clear benefits is one of the reasons why NASA has not returned to the Moon. Despite evidence proving the success of the Apollo 11 mission, some people claim that the mission was fake. Bill Kaysing, a former aerospace engineer and an insider in the US space program, was a prominent proponent of this theory and published a pamphlet in 1976 called "We Never Went to the Moon," arguing that the US did not have the capabilities to reach the Moon. He believed that NASA and the government used the Apollo program as a cover-up for a faked Moon landing. His theories were based on his own analysis of the technical capabilities of the rocket and the photographic evidence presented by NASA. Kaysing's opinions were considered convincing by some people because of his background as a former aerospace engineer, who had experience in the US space program, and had helped contribute to the US space program and taken part in designing the Saturn V rocket engines. This belief that the US lacked the technology for a successful Moon mission has contributed to the lack of public support for future Moon missions. Additionally, the high cost and risk associated with such a mission also played a role in the decision not to return. Some question whether the growth of China's space program will motivate NASA to pursue a return to the Moon. With China's burgeoning space program, will NASA's competitive drive be reinvigorated to undertake a more revolutionary return to the lunar surface? Guess we'll have to find out. Comment what your views are, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Space out.